Welcome to this tutorial brought to you by River City Graphics. Today I'll be showing you how to create an image gallery with enlarging thumbnails. So you can get a better idea of what we will be creating, here is the finished product. You can see here I have my images over on the side, and keep in mind you can fill this entire area up with images. I just kept it simple by having 4. And you can click on your image, open it up into a larger window, close it, and you can open up each of the other images. So that's what we're going to be creating. So we're going to head over into Flash to get started. And we're going to be creating an ActionScript 3 document. Then over in the properties, I'm going to change the size of my stage to be 600 pixels by 500 pixels. And now that I have that done, the next thing that we're going to do is set up our timeline. So I'm going to be making 2 layers. So we already have one, and I'm going to click this little button down here to create a new layer. And then for layer 1, I'm going to name it gallery, and that's going to hold all of the gallery minus the window that opens up. And then layer 2, we are going to name window, and that will hold all of the window and the animation and everything and all the action script for that. So the next thing that we need to do is import our images into our library. So I'm going to go up to File, Import, Import to Library, and we're going to select all of the images and click Open. And you can see them here over in the library. So the next thing that we need to do is take and drag these images out onto the stage, and we're going to basically make our thumbnails out of them. So I just drug my first image onto the stage, and I'm going to go out to 25% because this is a huge image. And basically, what you want to do with this whenever you're making thumbnails is try and get images that are the exact same size, or go into Photoshop and make your thumbnails or whatnot, because it makes it easier if you have images that are the same size, because you want all your thumbnails to be at least pretty close or the same size in order for it to look good. So what we're going to do with this is I'm going to click on the image, go over to properties, and as long as you have the little link icon on here, it basically locks the height and width to be in proportion. So I can go over to the width, and I'm going to hit 150, hit enter, and then it's going to automatically size down the height for my image. And I know that all of my images are the same size, so I can do that for each of these, and then I will have the same size thumbnails. So I'm just going to do that and then kind of roughly position them in here. And we're going to do the same thing with this. Properties, 150. And then we're going to go to trees, drag that out. And width 150. Alright, so now that I have that done, we can take and, I should probably get this on the stage, and we can go back to show frame, and that'll show the entire stage here. So that's why I was trying to get that image up a little higher. And so what we're going to do now is I'm just going to try and position these images where I want them. The top image and the bottom image are the most important, and everything else in between really isn't, because we can use the align palette. So basically just get the distance away from the sides that you want on this top and bottom image, and you can hold shift or control and select each of your images so that they're all selected. Go over to your align palette, and I have mine right here. You can go to window and then to align if you don't have that out in your toolbar here. And then what I'm going to do is click this align left edge, and you can see that it has aligned all that. And then I'm going to distribute the vertical centers in order to make these spaces. You can see this one's bigger and this one's smaller. If you click this, it will make them all the exact same size. So it just gives for a more professional look. So now we have that done, and the next thing that we're going to do is basically convert these images into a movie clip so that we can use them as buttons later in the action script. So what I'm going to do is click on my first image. I'm going to hit F8, and it's going to bring up the convert to symbol box. And what I'm going to do is just name this BTN1 and hit F8, and we're going to say BTN2. So I'm selecting each of these, hitting F8, and then giving it a name. We'll also have to go back and give it an instance name, so I'm going to say BTN4. So now we have all of these, and they are movie clips, but we can't really do anything in ActionScript with them until we give them an instance name. You can see that it's blank over here. So go up to your first image again, and then just type in BTN1, and we'll just give them the exact same name. And so this will allow us to actually target those things within the ActionScript. Okay, so now that we have done that, the next thing that we're going to do is create a text field, and I'll explain why we're doing this later, but basically we're going to go over to our text tool, just click to make a text field, we're going to make sure that it's dynamic text. So if it's on static or input, make sure you're on dynamic text. We'll just leave it on classic text. And then we'll give it an instance name of image text. And I'll just do image and then txt for text. And so basically we're just going to leave that off the stage because this is going to kind of act behind the scenes, so where the user can't see it, but it's actually going to do something within the action script. So the next thing that we're going to do is actually make the window layer. So we've kind of already made all of this stuff on the window layer, so I'm just going to take and rename these. We'll name that one gallery. I'll name this one window. It'll be easier just to switch them than to actually copy and paste everything. So on our window layer, which is currently blank, what we're going to do is create a rectangle. Okay, so we're going to go over to the rectangle tool. All right, and what we're going to do is I'm just going to grab a gray color. I'm going to grab the second gray down. You can see there's black, gray, and then another gray, and then we're going to select that one. It looks like it's all 9s in the hex code there. Oh no, all 6s. All right, so what I'm going to do is zoom in, probably about 200%, and what we're going to try and do is go over our image here, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be close. And so I'm just basically trying to get the same proportion for this rectangle as for our image thumbnail. So now that we have that done, I'm just going to go back out to show frame. And now what we can do is grab our selection tool, select that rectangle, and then we can hit F8 and create a movie clip out of it. And so what we're going to do is convert it to a movie clip that's called toggle window. Alright, and click OK. So now we can take and give it an instance name of toggle window. Alright, so now what we can do is go inside of this and we can animate this and everything and have it work just how we want it to. So once we're inside of here, what we're going to need to do is make 4 layers. So our first layer we're going to name with the animation. Alright, and then so we're going to create 3 more layers. So again, we should have 4. I'm just going to pull this up a little bit so that we can see everything. Alright, so now that we have this, the layer that's on top we need to call content. So that's what's actually going to be showing. And then we need to have another one, and we're going to call it theater. And we're going to take and call the third one AS for action script, and then we have our last one, which is animation. So the first thing that we need to do is create the animation for this. And if you remember right, when you clicked on our thing, you can see that it kind of opens up from a distance and it kind of fades in and everything. So that's kind of what we're going to be trying to do. So go ahead and select your first frame, and what we're going to do is basically scale this image or this rectangle down to a small size. And also take the center registration point, which is this white circle, and put it up into the top left corner. So now what we're going to do is take and right click, go copy frames, and go out to frame 12 and paste frames. So then in the middle we're going to right click and go to create classic tween. And what this is going to do is allow us to basically animate this over a period of time. So it's going to be going from small up to a large size. So we need to click on this frame 12 keyframe and basically size this up, and we're going to make sure again that the registration point from the center is up in that top left corner. And so then I'm just going to scale this up, and we're basically just trying to get the edges even so that it's even all the way around, at least on the left, top, and right. And so once you get it about right, then we should be able to see that this is animating, and it looks like it got off somewhere. The registration point seems to have moved, so I'm going to take the registration point and move it into the top left on frame 1. If you're having issues with your animation working, 99% of the time it's going to be that registration point. For some reason Flash just likes to change it, likes to move it back to the center even though you've had it in the top left. So just keep an eye on that, and now you can see that we have a nice animation working right here. So now on frame 12 what we're going to do is basically copy that frame, and we're going to paste this out on frame 24, and then we need to do basically the opposite. So we're going to take this and scale it down. I'm just going to scroll up so I can see, and we're going to be scaling it down to something small. So now we can right click and create classic tween, and you see now we have it opening and we have the closing animation. So that's how we're going to be creating that toggle window effect. So basically the only thing that we're missing from the original that I showed you was the fading. So what we're going to do is click on the first frame, go over to your properties, and what we're looking for is you're probably going to need to click on this again. If you don't see it, make sure that you actually click on the rectangle and then go to Style, go down to Alpha, and then we want the alpha to be at 0. And then we want it to kind of fade up, so then we'll just set the alpha. It already seems to be at 100, but just to make sure, we'll go ahead and do that. So again, click on the rectangle, go to Style, Alpha, and then put it up to 100%. So the alpha basically controls the transparency. It's like the opacity in Flash. So you can see now we have it fading all the way up. Then it gets to full opacity there, and then basically we want it to go back down to 24, so we're going to click on this, click on the rectangle, go to Style, Alpha, and then drag this down to 0. So now we have a nice animation that fades in and out, so it's not as harsh as just this rectangle all of a sudden coming out of nowhere. Plus, we have it at 0 here, so it won't show up in the initial gallery, so there won't be a little rectangle up there. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is add in the content. So what we're going to do is come out to frame 12, and we're going to insert a keyframe. And on this keyframe, what we're going to do is add in a couple of things. We need to add in the UI loader, which is actually going to load in our images, and we need to add in the stop button. So we're going to do the UI loader first, because that's going to be on the bottom, and we're going to go up to Window, and then we're going to go to Components. And what we're looking for is, yours might look like this, go to User Interface, and then we're going down to UI Loader. And we're just going to drag this out. So basically what we're looking for is, again, move that registration to the left, and we're just going to try and position that up in the corner. If you have snapping on, it's a lot easier. And then we're just going to zoom it down here, and it will snap if you have that on. Otherwise, just zoom in and try and get it as close as possible to our gray rectangle. So now basically it's going to come in here, and then the UI loader will come up, and this is what's actually going to be loading in our image. So right after the image gets, or the animation gets finished, then the image is going to load in, and all is well. So what we're also going to add in is a little closing button. But before we do that, we need to take the UI loader and give it an instance name. Otherwise, it's kind of going to defeat the purpose, because we won't be able to add any images. So what we're going to call it is my loader. Alright, so that's a simple name to remember. So now we're going to create the little close button, and I'm just going to grab a rectangle. We can create a little black one, just like I had in the demo. You can actually take and put an X on there if you want, mess with the hit state and all that. But what I'm going to do is just take and make a little black square here. And we're going to try and bring that up. And it looks like it wants to go behind our UI loader, so I guess we can even take and put it on its own layer, just so that we don't have to mess with trying to get it from behind and all that. So I'm just going to remove these frames. So basically I just created a new layer. I'm going to take and click on our little button we just created, hit Control X to cut that, come out here onto this new layer, insert keyframe, and we're going to edit paste. We can do paste in place, and I'll put it in the same spot, and then basically we can just call this close BTN. And so now we have it on its own separate layer, so you can kind of layer things better that way. So now you can take and put that up in the corner, and now that'll be your little close button. You can take and make that whatever you want. You can put a little red X or a white X or whatever you want. Right now it's just going to be a black square. So now that we have that selected, what we need to do is enable us to use that. So I'm going to hit F8, and I'm going to turn our little button into something that we can use. So I'm going to say close underscore BTN, hit OK, and again we're making a movie clip out of that, and then I'm going to go up to the instance name and call it close underscore BTN. So now we can use that in the action script. So the last thing that we need to do on here is actually add in, if you look at the original, you can see that I kind of have darked out the background, and you'll see things like that on Hulu, and I think YouTube did it for a little bit. Things like, it's called a theater mode. Basically, you want the main content to stand out and the rest of the background to kind of be blacked out. So you don't have to add this in, but I think it's kind of a cool effect. So I'm just going to take and what we're going to do is put this out on frame 12 as well. So we're going to go out to frame 12 on our theater layer and go to insert keyframe. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make sure it's on show frame to where it'll actually zoom out here. And what we're going to do is grab our rectangle tool, and this time we want the first gray icon. I said that it goes from black to this darker gray to the lighter gray, so we're going to go with the one that's all threes. And so basically we're just going to try and go over our stage, and you can see that there we go. Now we have the darker area on there, so it's going to come out here, and then it's going to get darker, and then it's going to go away. So now we have pretty much all of that set up except for the actions, but we're going to be running the action script for the first part of the scene before we do that. So I'm just going to go back to scene 1. You can navigate through your Flash document by using these little arrows up here, or these little links. So right now we're within the toggle window movie clip. So if we go back to scene 1 by clicking on that, you can see this is where we had our original timeline at. So what we're going to do is basically add in the action script that works these buttons. It'll actually open up the window, and it's going to pass which button was clicked to the other action script so it knows which image to load. So I'm going to take, and we can just put this on the gallery. So just click on the first frame of the gallery, click on actions, and here's what we're going to take and put in here. First we need to have a stop action, so stop, open close parentheses, semicolon. And then we need to basically create event listeners for our buttons. So I'm going to say btn1 dot add event listener, and that's a capital E and a capital L, open parenthesis, mouse, event, and then dot click, and then a comma, and then I'm going to basically name a function now. So I'm going to say load image 1, just to keep it simple, close parenthesis, and then a semicolon. So basically we've just created a event listener for our button, so it'll listen for when it's clicked. So it's waiting, and then when it's clicked it's going to run the function load image 1. So we'll make that function in a minute. But first I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it 3 more times. And what we're going to do is basically change this to a 2, the third one to a 3, and the fourth one to a 4. And now we're changing that on the button name as well as the load image, so we have different functions for each of these buttons. So we'll have load 1, or load image 1, load image 2, load image 3, load image 4. So now we actually need to make these functions of load image 1 and everything, each of the other numbers. So what we're going to do is say function space load image 1, and we can just copy and paste this, so that's the nice thing about that. So we're going to say event colon, and that's going to be mouse event with a capital M and a capital E, close parenthesis, and then colon, void, open curly bracket, hit enter. Make sure that it adds a closing curly bracket. Mine auto does that, but if it doesn't, make sure you add a opening curly or a closing curly bracket. And then what we're going to do is set our image text. Now if you remember, we created this this random text field out here, and you're probably thinking, well, why is he creating that? This is why. So let me write it out first, and then I'll explain it. And so we're going to say image text. So image and then txt dot text, and that's text, and then space equals space, and then 2 quotes and a semicolon. Inside of the quotes we're going to just take and put an A. Now you can put whatever you want. I'm just using letters in order to signify which image was clicked, and then I'm going to hit enter and then say toggle window dot go to and play. So basically the A and the P are capitalized, and then open parenthesis, close parenthesis, semicolon, then inside the parentheses we're going to put a 2. Alright, so let me explain what's happening here. Basically when we click on an image, it's going to run this function. Now what it's going to do is set this text to an A, and that seems kind of pointless because no one's going to see the A, but basically what we're using, you can use variables and things like that. I think you have to use like Flash, where you'd actually have to package the action script separately in order to use the variables throughout the document. So instead of doing that, I just created a text file here, or a text object. And so basically you can take and put in whatever you want on one frame, and then you can take and within another movie clip you can grab that same data. So basically what I'm using it for is when we click on the first image, the thing is going to be set to A. When we click on the second image, it's going to be B. When we click on the third one, it's going to be C. And when we click on the last one, it's going to be D. And then from within the other movie clip, from within the window movie clip, we're going to be able to grab the data from this and figure out which image we should actually load. because Flash is very temperamental. If you use PHP or MySQL, you have access to the variables you create throughout the entire thing, but in ActionScript, it's kind of hard to pass them from one stage to the next. So if you see, we have everything out here in the ActionScript. The minute that we take and go into our window movie clip, the minute that we go into this, then we have to either remake all of that ActionScript or we have to pass it. And so I'm using the text field in order to pass that from one thing to the other. So we'll just go back into the ActionScript. I just wanted to explain that for those of you who were wondering why I'm using the text rather than trying to use variables and pass that around. I just found it was easier to explain and to do just using the text field. So now basically all we need to do is copy this function, and it makes our job really easy because we'll just hit enter a couple times, paste it, and we're just going to do that 3 times. So now we have 3 functions. We just need to change load image to load image 2, then load image 3, and then load image 4. And so now we should be able to work everything like that. But also we need to make sure we change the letters, because otherwise it's going to load the first image every time. So we're going to say image text B, and then C, and then D. So now that should all be working. So now what we need to do is take and go into our window. So I'm going to click on the window layer, and then I'm going to scroll up, grab your selection tool, and double click on your little movie clip. It's probably hard to see on YouTube, so I'm just going to zoom in. You can see that it has a little box up here. You can double click on that, and it'll bring you right in there. So I'm just going to zoom back out. So now what we need to do is we have our AS layer. Now on our first frame we need to create some ActionScript, and we also need to do some ActionScript on our 12th frame. So I'm going to right click on the 12th frame, go to insert keyframe, so that way we have 2 separated areas. So on the first frame I'm going to click the actions, and I'm going to type in stop, open close parenthesis, semicolon. And so now is a pretty good time to explain what the other part of that stuff before was doing. So if I go back into the ActionScript we typed before, you can see that it's also going to toggle window, go to, and play 2. So whenever you're addressing a movie clip, you need to say its name, or its instance name, and then you can say whatever you want it to do. So we're saying within toggle window, we want it to go to and play the second frame when a button is clicked. So now if we go back and look at what that is, you can see that we're going to go to and play 2, which is going to start this animation opening. So that's basically the opening, that function opens up our toggle window. So currently it's stopped because we don't want it to just open up whenever we open our document, just the gallery's just sitting there. So that's why you have the stop there. So it's going to go to 2, and it's going to start opening up. So at frame 1 you won't see it, 2 starts opening. So that's why we need the stop on the first frame. So now out at frame 12 we're going to open up the actions, and this is where the business end of this gallery is going to come. So the first thing we need to do is again stop it, because we don't want it to continue going and then just close. So stop, open close parentheses, semicolon. And then what we're going to do is create the function in order to close the window. So what we're going to do is say close button, close underscore btn, which is what we created this little black square to be. And then we're going to say dot add event listener, and it's a capital E and an L, again, open parenthesis, mouse, event, capital M, capital E, dot click in all caps, comma, and then we're just going to say, how about close toggle, and that'll be the function name, and the close parenthesis, semicolon. So now that we have that, what we're going to do is hit enter. We're going to write that function, so we're going to say function, and then what do we name it? Close toggle. Alright, and then it's going to be open parenthesis, event, colon, mouse, event, alright, close parenthesis, colon, void, open curly bracket, hit enter. Mine again created the closing bracket, make sure that yours is there, and then we're going to say go to and play, open parenthesis, close parenthesis, semicolon, inside the parentheses we're going to put a 12. Alright, so what is this doing? Basically it's saying when you click on that button, go to and play the 12th frame. So you can see that we're on 12 and it's stopped here, but basically it's going to start playing here. So if you basically say go to and play, it's going to kind of override the stop, and so it's going to start playing and it's going to close. So you can see that that's how that works. So that's how the close button will basically play the closing animation. So the next thing that we need to do is load in our images, because that's kind of the entire point of this gallery. So I'm just going to hold down the slash key, which is basically a comment system, to kind of break up our code here. So all this is the close button and the stop and everything. And then down underneath here is where we're actually going to load in our images. So here's where this is going to happen. So I'm going to say if, and this whole thing is going to be run with an if statement. So if, open parenthesis, and this is a little tricky. This is how we're actually going to get the value from that image. So if you're trying to address any kind of object that's on your main stage that we made way back in here, and you're within a movie clip, this is how you're going to do it. So I'm just going to go to our actions, and we're going to say movie clip, and then open parenthesis, this dot parent, all right, close parenthesis, dot, and then you put your object. So I'm going to say image text dot text, and then space equal space, two quotes, closing parenthesis, and open curly bracket. And I'm going to go back into those quotes and put the A. And so basically we're saying if the image text is equal to A, then we want to do something. So after the curly bracket, I'm going to hit enter. Again, it added a closing curly bracket. And so if it's equal to A, what do we want it to do? We want it to load the image that's associated with A. So we're going to say, basically, in order to work the or the UI loader, we're going to need to bring in our image, and we're going to have to get a URL request, and then we're going to have to actually take the request and put that into the loader. So I'm going to type this out, and basically we're going to make a variable, and we're going to call it image URL, okay, or img URL, and then a colon, string, and then space equals space. And then basically this is where the URL of your image is. So I'm going to hit two quotes and a semicolon. And so inside of here, our image is on C colon. I'm just using it for my desktop. Keep in mind you can use this from a web server, and you'll just take and put in the URL to the JPEG or PNG or whatever you're using. So I'm going to say C colon slash users slash Kevin slash desktop. Make sure you spell this right. And then slash, I called it images, and then slash whatever image our first one is, which we might actually have to come back and change this because I'm not, let's see, go to scene 1. Our first image is the boat. So let's make sure we named it boat. Okay. So basically boat, flowers, mountains, trees. We'll try and remember that. Alright, so we're going to go back in here. Back to the action script, and then we'll call it boat.jpg. Okay, and so make sure you spell everything correctly. Alright, so now basically what we're going to do is take that URL, and then we're going to get a URL request from it. So I'm just going to hit enter, and we're going to say var, and then we're going to call it my request. Alright, colon, and it's going to be a URL request, and make sure that URL is capitalized and the R on request is capitalized. And then it's space equals space, new space URL request, just like URL request was earlier with the capitals. And then we're going to have an open parenthesis, and we're going to call it image URL, just like we had in our other variable, close parenthesis, and then a semicolon. So basically we're taking and we're making a request from this URL. So we're saying, here's the image, here's where we're wanting the image, and then basically we need to take the image and put it into the URL loader. So it's just kind of a three-step process. So on the next line, I'm just going to add in something that basically scales the content correctly. So I'm going to say my loader, which is the UI loader, dot scale, and then content, and C on content is capital, and space equals space, true, colon. And so that's just going to scale everything properly inside of the gray box, the UI loader. So I'm going to hit enter, and then this is where we actually take and link the loader to the URL that we just pulled in. So we're going to say my loader dot load, open parenthesis, close parenthesis, semicolon. Inside of the parentheses, we're going to say my request. So just make sure that you have image URL is going into the my request string right here, and then the my request string is going into the loading string right there. Alright, so now basically once we have this done, all we need to do is copy this, and we're just going to paste it 3 more times. and it's going to be a little bit different because it's not going to be if. So I think I'm just going to copy this right here. If you ever get confused, especially if you have multiple copies of things, you can take and space them out using these slashes in order to comment out your code. So basically you can say, you can even cut in here and say image 1, and then so you know exactly what you're on while you're doing it. That's just a little tip that I use in order to keep my stuff organized. So basically we already have the first one right here, and then we're going to go down to the second one, and we want to say that if the image text equals B, then what are we going to load? And I forgot the order again, but I'm thinking that it was flowers, mountains, and then something else. So we're going to say, here, we'll just go back and get that right now so that we don't mess that up. Flowers, mountains, and then trees. Alright, we're good to go on that. So we'll come back into here, actions, flowers, and we'll just change that on each one of these. Mountains, and then trees. Okay. So there we go. So now what we need to do, I just wanted to get that out of the way before I forgot what the order was on that. So now basically we need to change up the if. So instead of having just an if, we want to say else if for the second one. So we want to say basically if this is the case, if it equals A, do this. Otherwise, which is the else, otherwise check and see if it's B, and then do this. Otherwise, check and see if it's C, and then do this. So the else if basically is like the, if it's not this, check and see if it's this, and then usually it's one of those. And then, so we needed to change that. Also, we need to take and change the image URL to 2s, and also the my request to 2. Basically, if you use too many like the URL request within one area, it gets kind of complainy. Flash does. It doesn't really like that. So we're going to say image URL to my request to, and then just change those throughout. So you can leave the my loader the same. That doesn't need to be changed because the instance name is still the same. So basically we're just going to go down to the third one. We're going to change it to C. We're going to change this to else if, and we're going to change all of these things to 3s. Alright. So once you know what you're changing, the first one is the hardest because you just need to change up the things once, and then after that it's pretty easy. So we're going to say else space, and then we want to make sure that this is a D. That's probably the most important thing there. And then we're going to say 3. Okay, yeah, no, we'll make it 4s. Make it 4, 4, 4, and 4. Now, if we did everything right, this should be working correctly. So let's go ahead and go to Control and then Test Movie. We don't have any errors, so that is a plus. So we're going to click on this, and look at that. It opened up the boat. So we close that. Wow, look at that. It closed it. Open that up. Opens up the flowers there. So we'll close that. Open this up. Mountains. And there we go. So you can check that out. That's pretty cool. One thing I forgot while I'm looking at the theater mode, you can see how here's my original. Here you can kind of see the images in the background. If you want it to be like this, then just leave it like that. But if you want it to kind of be opaque there, what you'll need to do is take and we'll go back to the timeline, click on the theater mode, click on your rectangle there. Make sure you have just the rectangle selected. Go over to the properties, and like we did before, you can take and seems to not want me to add a style right now. You might have to take and hit F8 and turn it into a movie clip and click OK. And then once you click on that, you can add a style, alpha, and then you can just bring that up to something like, I don't know, 75. It looks pretty good. And you can see that you have it to the point where, we'll zoom in here. You can see that it is just like opaque, and you can kind of see through there. So now if you do Control Test Movie, Test, you can see that we have more of a theater effect there where it kind of darks everything out. So you might even go with a black for the background so that when you lower the opacity, then it looks a little bit darker. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. This was actually a request from a fan, so I thought it was a good idea for a tutorial, so I created it. So make sure that you guys subscribe, rate, and comment, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.